welcome to Vendée Live, and it's with me, Dee Kafari. We are in a dry and sunny Les Sables in France, and the boats have been on the racecourse for 16 days. Now, as you may have noticed, Andy Robertson is not here today. I have taken over the hot seat, and let's just hope I do a good job, because I know he will be checking up on me so that he can earn his well-deserved break. Behind the scenes is a professional team that are keeping me on track, so I think we're in good hands. Now, today, joining me on the platform will be a former colleague of mine, Anne-Marie Wood. She was part of my Vendée Globe 2008 campaign. She is Pip Hare's cousin and is now a school teacher at Priory School in Southsea, UK. And her and her students will be joining us for some questions a little later. Also on the platform today will be joining me Geoff Brown, the technical director for Medallia. As we've seen before on the programme, he's going to give us his views on the race so far and the conditions that the boats are seeing. Before we come to them, let's have a think about what's going on. The front runners in this fast-paced South Atlantic are really starting to feel that sense of fatigue. They're getting tired, they're trying to balance that boat speed and the durability. We're starting to see the fleet split, and we're having a race within a race with our foilers and our daggerboard boats. And we predict that before the end of the week, we'll see yet another split in the fleet. The exciting prospect is we may be on for a new record by the end of the week. We're thinking Friday for the approach to the Cape of Good Hope, and that potential record could be broken from the equator to the Cape of Good Hope. 2016, Alex Thompson set that record of 8 days and 15 hours, and there's every chance on Friday we could see that broken. But in the meantime, let's join Sam Goodchild on board Vulnerable to see what the conditions are really like.
Hello, a nice sunny day down in the South Atlantic. It's still a bit wet. Last night was a bit nicer than the night before. I managed to get some sleep. And the wind's back up today, so we got a little bit of a front coming through, or we got to go through one later. So we've got the small sails up. And still trying to find the balance of not too hard and trying to go fast. Going faster but slam harder, or not slam at all and not go very fast. There you go. I saw Jeremy Bayou this morning. He's 8 or 9 miles up there. He said he had a little bit of a sleep in, so I found myself next to him, and then he woke up and went faster again. So I haven't seen him since, but I'm still happy. I think I'm 7th, which is, it's not as good as the first 2 weeks, but I'm in the right pack in one piece, so that's the main thing. We're not even in the Southern Ocean yet, so it's a long way to go.
So great news from Sam Goodchild there, pushing hard, trying to find that balance. But in a second-generation boat, he's doing really well and remarkably staying up with the front of the fleet there, finding that balance. So my guest today, Anne-Marie Wood at Priory School in the UK. Now, you've got a long history with the Vendée Globe as well. 2008 working with the team, and then 2020 being a family member for Pip Hare in her first Vendée Globe, and now as a teacher sharing the race with your school students. How's it different for you?
It's been a part of my life now for quite a long time. So the first race, obviously, when I worked with you, was so different. You know, I'd already worked with you when you had already gone around the world twice. You had a fully funded, sponsored boat, and you know, you were so well prepared, you know, with a professional team and a great sponsor behind you. But actually, when you're working on the race, you have to have quite a bit of an emotional detachment from it, because you know, it's a job at the end of the day. There's an awful lot of emotion associated with the Vendée Globe, and you kind of have to park that a little bit when it's your job. Then I think, you know, forward wind a few years, and suddenly, you know, my cousin and good friend Pip is doing it, and she didn't have chalk and cheese. She didn't have any of that set up. I actually didn't know if she could do it. It was a sort of scratch together campaign that she had just achieved through grit and dogged determination to get herself to the start line. And I think during the last race, I just held my breath for 3 months, kind of sort of quite petrified most of the time, which I think did turn to great pride when she just absolutely smashed it. And I think that's now continued through, you know, 4 years later. She's still continuing to push herself, but actually I think my main emotion now is just excitement, because And this says something. I don't think I know anybody who loves sailing as much as Pip, and her enthusiasm for what she's doing, living her dream, is so contagious. So I think actually now I'd say my emotion is mostly excitement. But then when I woke up this morning and there was a little wobble with the tracker, I immediately felt my heart move straight back to my mouth.
Well, that's really nice. Now you get the chance to share that with the students. So how is the school following the race, and is the excitement just as infectious?
Yes, so I went down to France and watched the start of the race, and I was really lucky because I had a ringside seat on a rib going up the canal. And you can't fail to come back and just carry that electricity and that excitement with you. And I walked into my classes and said, let me tell you about the weekend I've just had and what my cousin is doing. And, in a school, in any school, you always try and inspire young people. We run a exam funnel curriculum like every school, but we also run at our school a game changer curriculum, which is all about trying to get our students to see beyond their horizons, to take on challenges, to show a bit of determination, grit, and all of those things that we know can make their lives a little less ordinary as they go forwards. And we talk the talk, but every once in a while, if you can get someone like Pip to cross their paths, then there is inspiration for you on a plate, isn't it? Somebody out there who her whole life has pushed herself and is living the dream. That's got to be something that students aspire to. And I come in every morning now, and the first question I get asked in my classes is, how's Pip? How's she doing? Is everything all right? So you can see behind me, they were all, desperate to come and talk to her today.
Well, you're going to have to practice some resilience and manage disappointment a little bit, because you may have noticed as you regarded the wiggly track from Pip last night, she has had a little bit on and she is unable to join us live. But we do have a message from Pip that she sent as a commiseration.
Hi everyone, from Pip on Medallia. Sorry I couldn't make it onto the show with you today, but I've got a winch that I need to take apart and rebuild during daylight hours, and it's not easy on a boat that's currently doing 22.8 knots and bouncing up and down. So I had to prioritise that, and that's the thing with this race is, a small problem can escalate really quickly, and so every time you see a technical issue, you need to make sure that you give yourself the time and the space to fix it before it escalates, and that has to be a priority. Anyway, thank you all for following the race. I mean, we're only 2 weeks in and there's so much has happened already. I can't even imagine what the rest of the world looks like, but I think it's going to be really exciting, especially once we get round the Cape of Good Hope and head down into the Big South. For now, I just need to get back to my toolbox and keep sailing. I've got Damien Sagan 2 miles ahead of me. I can see him. So not only am I fixing a winch, but I'm also trying to kind of maintain a bit of pressure on him too, because we're not just sailing around the world, we're racing around the world, which kind of adds extra level onto everything.
So that's still proving to be competitive. Joff, now you've listened to that audio file from Pip, should we be nervous? Are you nervous?
No, she's got it all under control. I was a bit nervous this morning. I was woken up by somebody in Australia wondering what was going on when they saw the 2 o'clock position. But it's, you've been out there, you get these clouds. She did a really good job going through the doldrums and before that, and since that really, and she just got unlucky with the weather last night and lost sort of some key miles really, because as you know, it's a real race to Cape Town at the moment, and her group were particularly struggling, and we sort of knew they were going to struggle more than the front group in that in this part of the race. And yeah, that's happened. But she's where she should be. She's with a group of her peers. The boats are all the same age, and as she just said, she's with Damien, and that's a good. He's a really good sailor. That's the pace she needs to be setting.
Oh, that's good that you feel that she's on track and she's got obviously repairs underhand. So stepping into the hot seat, Joff, is you now as well, because if Pip can't answer the questions, we thought it's only fair that you should answer the questions from the school. And they say never work with children because they're quite unpredictable. And I thought I'd throw caution to the wind and on my first show, deal with the children and not have the live link with the skipper, but we can manage that. So Anne-Marie, do we have the first question for Joff?
Yes, Sakina's got a first question. We've got lots of questions, but Sakina's going first.
How does Pip charge her phone?
Yep, good question. Similar to how you would, I guess, plugs it in. We've got a big battery bank on the boat, which we which we charge up. We have solar panels. We have hydro generators, which generate power through the boat's motion through the water. And as a backup, we generally have the diesel engine.
Next question.
Yeah, that leads on to the next question, actually, from Suki.
Does the boat have an outboard?
It doesn't, no. It's got an inboard engine, but that is sealed before the race, so they can't use it to propel the boat. So they have these, we call them seals, that the race officials give us, like a big cable tie, and we have to tie that through the prop shaft before the start of the race to prove that we haven't motored when there's no wind.
Oh, no cheating allowed. Okay, next question.
Joel.
Has there been any scariest moments or where the boat's almost tipped over?
I can't really answer that. It's all scary for me. I wouldn't want to be out there. I think, you know, all the skippers love being out there. I think they do get scared. They can probably comment on that. You can't do a race around the world at this level and at this speed without, I'm sure, being nervous at some point. But these guys all love what they're doing and wouldn't change it for the world.
I think probably Pip's closest moment was probably last night when it all went wrong and all the sails were on the wrong side and it all got a bit confusing. But as Joff said, you know, we actually love being out there. We just worry about it after the fact and think, oh, that was quite scary. But otherwise, we love what we're doing. Maybe there's a final question there, Anne-Marie.
Oh, there's so many. Benji.
How do you get food and water and how do you cook it?
Yeah, so nothing too sophisticated. The boat has water makers which take the salt out of the seawater. So the boat only starts with basically 20 litres of water on board, so enough for 4 days. And after that, we make the water with the water makers. They're called. All the food, especially with Pip, is nearly all freeze dried. So it's really lightweight powder. It's like a cup of soup, effectively, or a pot noodle that you just pour hot water over. Which leads on to the only cooking facilities are literally jet boil. So it's like a single burner camping stove. So nothing too luxurious.
Maybe not quite as good as your school lunches. Priory School, we're going to hold it there, but I think because you do have so many questions and you've been so good, I think we're probably trying to arrange another session where you don't get to talk to Joff, but you actually got to talk to Pip. But have you got a final message that you want to send to Pip that we'll make sure she gets?
I think just, you know, we all are going to follow Pip every single wave of the way. And I think we all just want to give her a really big cheer because she is just amazing. And we just love the fact that she's out there doing her thing. So everybody, Pip, Pip. Pip, Pip. Go, Pip.
All right, thank you very much, Anne-Marie, for your time, and the students at Priory School for taking some time out of your lessons today. And we are sure we will be seeing you later on in the programme. Thank you. Joff, if you can stay with us, we've just had these really fast conditions in the last few days. In fact, Pip's been in the top 10 speed-wise in the 30-minute rankings regularly. So you must be really pleased, but are you a bit nervous about the wear and tear?
I think so. I mean, we're really pleased with where she is. You know, she was at the head of her contemporaries up with Benji, and doing really well. But you can just see how, you know, through the fleet, it's very much, you know, in chronological order of when they were built, give or take a few boats. It's just very hard. And you saw earlier Sam Goodchild struggling with his boat to keep up with the brand new boats. And we're the same with his generation. And it is, you know, I think you said yesterday, the speed of these boats now just means that you're literally going from the doldrums to the Southern Ocean. And back in 2008, you know, you'd have had a pre-Southern Ocean checklist where you'd have found hopefully on a quieter day, you'd have had a good look around the boat and sort of checked it before you get into the sort of the fast conditions. But these days on these boats, it's all fast, and you don't really get those opportunities. So it is a concern.
I was going to ask you about that because I remember I was quite diligent with my checklist before it got cold and before conditions got difficult. But like, how does she do those checks now? Like, what's the plan that you guys have put in place?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, the planning's all done beforehand, but you can see in Sam Goodchild's video, I mean, that is the definition of being in a washing machine, isn't it? I mean, it's very difficult to, in those conditions, to go out and see what's going out on the decks or check the chafe on the lines, and also it's dangerous for the skippers to be out there too much. And as Pip said, she's now 2 miles from Damien Sagan. So when you're not going to slow down to go and check. So it's really difficult finding those times. But you just have to, they did have some lighter conditions, and at that point Pip had a really good look through the boat. So yeah, it's just hard. It's hard to keep on top of it.
Well, you're going to stay with us, but first of all, we're going to have a listen to how Ollie here checks the weather, because skippers use different things, and Ollie took a different approach.
I wanted to take this opportunity to explain to you with my globe where I am at the moment, what I've sailed so far, and what's the plan for the next couple of days. Well, I started the race 16 days ago in Les Sables d'Olonne. First, we sailed past Cape Finisterre, leaving the Bay of Biscay. Then we went offshore. We sailed past Madeira, left Madeira to our left. Then we left the Canary Islands to our left, and then very close to Cape Verdes to our left. And then we kind of sailed across the Atlantic towards the Brazilian coast, across the equator. And now here we are, only about 400 miles off the Brazilian coast. What's the plan for the next couple of days? Well, the aim is eventually to get to the Cape of Good Hope down here. Where is it? Here. But we're still quite far over to the west. So really the plan is to try and catch a low pressure system that starts to get us east. At the moment, the path is not very clear.
Well, thanks for that, Ollie. Hopefully I can add a little more detail. So this is the Cape of Good Hope. And as we can see with the general situation, we've got the low pressure that the guys are riding now, high pressure here, and then we've got the systems lining up in the Southern Ocean. We're now starting to see this red line, and this is the ice zone, the exclusion zone that the skippers may not pass south of. So as we scroll through, we're seeing this yellow track, which is actually routed for Charlie Dallin and the movements he's going to do. You can see he sits just on the front of that low pressure for longer than most of the rest of the fleet. As we go forwards, we then add the track that Yannick Bestevan's likely to take. He's just a little bit further back, and he falls off the back of that low pressure, so he needs to position himself for the next low pressure. Going through, we're also seeing now Louis Burton's track, who's again a little bit further back. So you can see as you're further back in that peloton, you're having to make different decisions. But we're also seeing the weather evolve, and we're seeing the South Atlantic high become a bit more established. So those boats, the daggerboard boats at the back of the fleet, will have a much more traditional route, heading south before they come round to the east. And we have a daggerboard boat being routed here. Now, as we look at the end here, we see the way the weather positions are lined up with the exclusion zone. Now, to get the best downwind conditions, they have to be quite far south. That exclusion zone has recently, in the last 24 hours, been moved further south, so it gives the sailors more space. The reason they all line up on the south here is because they want to do the shortest distance. The further south you are, the shorter the distance. But also, the closer you are to that exclusion line, and that means there's a lot of jibes ahead. So a lot of manoeuvres and a really busy life for the skipper. So let's see how Johan Richomme talks about his life in the South Atlantic in these conditions.
It's very intense sailing. The boat is jumping around a lot and the speeds are high. I do wonder when I should back off a little bit because it feels pretty mad sometimes. So it's barely livable on board. We're going to have a transition to another low pressure before the Cape of Good Hope. So I'm not sure how to manage that one yet because the weather files are quite different and I'm not used to reading the wind strength really. In this area, the wind is very heavy, so it doesn't seem like it's matching the grid files a lot, which makes it hard to take decisions. There you go. I need some rest.
So Johan Richomme there getting some rest, and the weather he was talking about, the wind being heavy, means that 20 knots would feel like 25 knots. So it's just getting used to how that difference happens. So if we look at the positions now, this was taken at midday French time. So we can see Sam Goodchild, as we saw earlier, in the top 10, remaining in there at position number 7, and the leaders there trying to ride that low pressure for as long as possible. Going through, we've got Sam Davis, Boris Herman and Justine Metro in our internationals riding in that top 15. Again, the girls are pretty staying close together with Clarice Kramer in there. Pip Hare, 17th, struggled now because she's just had that incident of last night where she had that cloud issue. She's trying to stay in that fight, stay with those boats that we talked about earlier. Isabel Josh in 19th. And then we come down, Conrad Coleman, who I spoke to earlier that we're going to catch up with later, Alan Rora, and then Koji. And at the back of the fleet, we still have New Europe, Zabi, coming down, and he's still in the Northern Hemisphere, but he will be making its way south. Now, we talked that one of the closest skippers to Pip when she did her little circle was Benjamin Detroux, and he talks about the conditions in the South Atlantic as well.
We are fast at the moment and we go to the southeast. So I think it's very, very good to be the fastest possible to go in the Southern Ocean. So now for me, the only way is to try to be fast to keep this wind. But unfortunately, it will be not until the Cape of Good Hope. But I try to keep it more time and more time. So that's a good scenario for us for this South Atlantic at the moment. So I try to keep it.
So it's all about keeping it under control, keeping it fast and trying to ride that weather system. A little bit back in the fleet are the Dagger boats. And this morning I caught up with Conrad Coleman and I asked him like how he was and what things were looking like for him and how he stays so positive.
I'm always a little bit nervous being separated from the fleet laterally and maintaining my position to the east, but I remain convinced that as the fleet starts to turn now towards the southeast and then finally to the east, my position here in the east will finally become beneficial.
But you've spoken a lot about working on yourself. Now, has this been self-guided or have you chosen to work with a sports psychologist ahead of this race?
To get a little bit personal, the last race was incredibly challenging and I found strength almost through darkness, you know, through having a fight and getting ready for a fight and fighting my way all the way through up to and beyond the dismasting. But this time, you know, I don't want to be in a fight. I want to have a good time out here and I want to find a different source of energy and motivation. And so as we can see here, I've got sun on my face and I've got power from the sun this time. So power from the light. And thus far, things are going really well. Gee, that's always a great question. What does one do as a solo sailor with free time? Well, I mean, honestly, you know, we're in this sort of long-term drag race at the moment, south and now southeast, and so I think as I've demonstrated in my videos, I'm trying to be super attentive to the trimming and really keep the boat sort of on its feet, on its lines, and performing at its best. I get to listen to music, listen to podcasts occasionally with my satellite connection. I'll even watch a YouTube video to sort of disconnect from the challenges and from the stresses of what's going on, still while remaining involved in sailing the boat as fast as I can.
Well, you've been really kindly sharing your top tips and you commented that you learned from watching Alex Thompson's videos and now you're sharing the top tips. So we've got future skippers for future editions of the Vendée learning from Conrad Coleman.
I remember being inspired by other sailors. I watched, obviously, Ellen open the door to English speakers in the Vendée Globe and sort of brought the rest of us into this race with her. And then I watched it 2004 with close attention, and that was the one that really motivated me to sort of chuck in all of my traditional life and take this sort of crazy voyage off to Europe with a backpack on my back to become a Vendée Globe sailor. And then that was obviously reinforced by watching a certain edition of 2008 very, very closely. So Dee, you're partially responsible for this as well. It, sort of in my recent memory, the knowledge of what it was like to be on the outside looking in, and then now that I'm inside looking out, I'm trying to open up the door as wide as I possibly can so that people can come and see what it's really like and hopefully find inspiration for themselves.
Well, you're certainly doing that. And how do you feel in anticipation of a few days' time? Temperatures will get colder and you'll be heading into the deep south.
Well, I mean, that's what we really came for. You know, the most exciting part of the race is the leg in the Southern Ocean. That's the part that I absolutely adore because, as you said, this is rare. This is a privilege to be able to come and play in these waters, and it's just so special, and I love it so much. So I am overjoyed that in just a few days, according to the routine, we're going to have a little rendezvous with a big depression, and that's when the real Vendée Globe starts for me. So I'm excited.
So the real Vendée Globe starts in the Southern Ocean. Well, for many of us, it started 16 days ago. And Joff, just coming to you finally there, do you change your thought process for the Southern Ocean? Does it become more stressful for you being at home at the end of the phone? Or has it been stressful right from day one?
Yeah, I think from day one, I mean, anything can happen at any time. I mean, the fleet's been very fortunate with the conditions so far, so we've only got one retirement, which is very abnormal. But the boats are fully powered up in 15 knots of breeze, but less than that even. So and that's where the danger comes from, sort of rigging sales point of view. And obviously anything electronic, mechanical can happen at any time. So it's obviously the boats are further away from help, or if they have to retire out the race, but it's not really any different.
Well, that's good news, and you're very calm in your demeanour, so that's a good sign, I think, and let's hope the rest of your race stays just as calm. I really want to thank you for your time today and answering the questions from the children, and I'm sure you've got a bit more communication with Pip to go, so thank you for today.
Thanks, no worries.
Now, first show in the bag, nailed it, thank you. And it's the same time, same place tomorrow, but the burning question that so many children have been asking is, what do you do in your free time? So we checked in with Louis Burton just to see what he does in his free time. See you tomorrow.
D'avoir dû réparer mon bateau, ça m'a fait poncer énormément de choses, peinture de carbone. Du coup, j'ai de la poussière de carbone partout dans le bateau. Du coup, j'ai déclenché une allergie. Donc je me soigne les avant-bras, les jambes, etc. Donc voilà, dans tous les temps longs, on essaye de régler les petits problèmes, les petits bobos du quotidien, que ce soit le bateau ou le bonhomme. Voilà, et puis faire des bons repas, des bons grignotages, des bons apéros, faire de la musique, des podcasts, et puis après dormir. Ma philosophie à part, c'est que tant que ça va, il faut essayer d'engranger du sommeil.